Today I'll be reviewing this lens here. This is the Tamron 17 to 50mm F4 DI III VXD lens. Now, this lens is for the mirrorless cameras, and you can see here it is the E-mount version mounted on my Sony A1. And for this particular review, this is a setup I'll be using to share my photos and my findings for this particular lens. Now, I took a little bit of time to review this lens because I was concurrently reviewing another lens, but it's done now. I'm excited to share with you my findings. Before I start, I'd like to thank Cles Distribution and Tamron Singapore for providing me this copy to review here. Now, this is a loan set. I'm going to return it soon, but I enjoyed this lens, and I think if you are, like say, a traveler, or you are someone who just wants a ultra wide to a relatively standard zoom, this is the lens for you. And also, if you are doing videos, this lens is really exciting. Now, first, 17 to 50mm is a rare focal range. Normally, people build like 17 to 35 or 16 to 35. Most makers do not build from 17 all the way to 50mm. In fact, Tamron previous release was a 20 to 40mm f2.8 here. So this makes this lens special. 17 to 50mm give you 3 times zoom, and if you ask me, that is more than enough for most users out there, and definitely very exciting because 17 is really wide, as you can see in this photo here, and 50mm is a huge difference when it comes to framing. Now, this lens, when it comes to the physical aspect, is not very heavy. This weighs 460 grams here. This lens have 2 rings and 1 button. Well, the button can be configured using the Tamron app. For this particular review here, I didn't really use it much. Now, for the 2 rings itself, one is the focusing ring, which I feel this is really nice. It has the right amount of tension or tightness, while still being really smooth. So if you are intending to use it for video and you put a gear on it, I think this would be very nice to focus on. The next ring here is for zooming. As you can see here, one thing you notice is that the lens doesn't extend. So if you are a video shooter, you will know why you'll be excited about this lens. A lens that doesn't extend is perfect for video. Now, if you are a photo shooter, well, you benefit from a lens that doesn't extend and a lot more predictable when you put in a bag, and when you pull it out, it doesn't just extend for no good reason, right? And also doesn't, I'll say, as vacuum or suck in air, which some of you guys may be concerned for things like dust, or even when you shoot in areas with high moisture itself getting in the lens. A lens that doesn't extend while zooming is always nice. Now, this lens have a gasket, so there is some amount of weather sealing on this lens. Just note that with any lens that has weather sealing, it is not perfect, and I don't recommend you to shoot in heavy rain. Light rain, fine. Mid, fine. Heavy, it's still better get a shelter, because it's not only the lens, also the camera. Any of these things, any water gets in, it's going to spoil it. So, well, treat your lens well. If you're intending to share filter threads, this is a 67mm filter threads. It's quite a common one used by many Sony lenses and Tamron lenses, so you won't have an issue sharing filters on this particular lens. Now, this hood here is a petal-shaped hood. I find it really shallow. I don't have much issue of flaring outdoors, at least the shoots I did, but I can imagine that this really isn't enough. This hood is a friction lock type, so you just have to spin it in. Oh, I'm just trying to find the point why I can't get the point. And then it locks up. It locks up with a click, but I personally feel that no, hoods should have a button. It's just better. But friction hoods are fine, though some of my friction hoods, well, over time, they wear out, and then they start slipping a lot easier, which the reason why I didn't like it. Now, that's about it for the physical aspect of the lens. Let's talk about its image stabilization, right? But this lens have no VC, so any form of image stabilization is by the camera itself. I will say, as this is perfectly fine. Many cameras today have image stabilization built into the camera itself. Most of Sony cameras have it, so I don't think you have any issues here. This lens with in-body image stabilization from Sony performs quite well, 1/5 and 1/10 of a shutter. Now, you'll be wondering why I always like to talk about this. Now, the thing is that I did notice over time that some lenses, even though they are also using the in-body image stabilization, they are less stable. I do not know why, but they feel less stable than some other lenses itself. So I always make it a point to test it with the body stabilization to make sure that it is similar to other lenses. And this lens here, well, perfectly similar, 1.5 or 1/10 of a shutter depending on your focal range. Now when it comes to autofocus, this is a VXD, so it is very quiet, as you can hear here. Let me you probably can't hear the focusing motor much. You can hear more of the Sony's beep itself. And the focusing is relatively quick. The moment you see I press the button, you hear the beep relatively fast, except for a few times because there's nothing to focus in those areas there. And that's it. You know, in the field itself, I have no issues using the lens. I got perfect autofocus with this camera and lens setup, so I have no complaints for that. Now, when it comes to image quality, first 17 to 50mm is a huge range, so I will test both ends to just let you guys see what's the difference. At 17mm, it is really, really sharp. I mean, at the edges, it's expected that, you know, there'll be some softness, but, you know, stopping it down does remove a lot of the softness there, makes it really tack sharp, edge to edge. For 50mm, I did notice that similarly there is some softness at the edge, very, very sharp center. But, you know, once you stop down, the edge does improve. I mean, edge is even the side of the lens, like the left and right side, don't even go to very, very corner. It does improve and you get the sharpness that you want. Now, in the field itself, I will say sharpness is not a concern. I'll talk about it later when I share some of the photos I shot with this lens for portraiture. Now, when it comes to chromatic aberration, it is quite controlled. You can see in this night shot here, look at the bars of light. There is no chromatic aberration, at least none that I notice of. If you zoom in like 200%, you can see a little bit like some red-blue. Well, it's very, very minor and I don't think it's a cause for concern. If you look at the edges, there is some aberrations there. The light shapes are in some weird triangle style. So if you are intending to use it for landscape, just note that if you have lights at the side, this is how it looks like. Now, the sun star, when you do stop down to f16, looks like this. When it comes to macro, this lens do focus better at the longer part of its lens, the longer part of the focal range. At 50mm, it can go as close as 30 cm and you get like 0.26 times magnification. And if you do use the wide area, which gives you some weird effects, you get 0.21 times magnification at 19 cm itself. So up to you, you can do some artistic stuff with it, but you know, it's better as a macro lens at 50mm. That's about it for the synthetic test. Now, in real-world shooting itself, if you are to focus on the subject, it looks perfectly sharp. I mean, for the purpose of portrait, at 50mm, it's sharp off-center, fine. I never have any issues, and you know, 17 to 50 gives you a lot of creativity space. I shot some cyberpunk style shoots, and you can see here, ultra-wide is very interesting, and you can also zoom in to 50mm that gives you a distinct difference in the field. These lenses do have bokeh at 50mm. Let me show you some bokeh here. Well, at f4, I don't expect it to be ultra smooth. It is not the smoothest. It is not the roughest. I would say it belongs more to the rough side, but definitely not bad for f4 lens. I have seen f2.8 lenses or f2 lens that perform worse than this. Well, bokeh is subjective. At least I think it is subjective. So I don't think this lens is meant to create a lot of bokeh. So probably don't worry too much about it. Now that's about it for the photo aspect. I'll now talk about the video aspect of it. And for video, I'll talk about focus breathing and parafocal. First, focus breathing. This lens is superb. Very, 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 very minimal focus breathing. In fact, I can't see it. You can see in this video here for night shoot. Let me focus and shift around both 50 and 17mm. Focus breathing is very, very minimal, if any at all. At least I can't tell. Now, when it comes to parafocal, I noticed that Tamron is using some sort of a software or firmware fix for the lens. When you zoom very, very quickly, you will notice that the focus jumps, and it is very, very apparent. As you can see here, the camera is trying to refocus every time you pull the lens back. So yeah, this is the effect of the lens. Don't worry too much about it, but just know that it exists, and if you are trying to do the suddenly zoom out effect, which some people like for video purposes, is quite cool, this is not the lens for it. But if not, if you are doing a slow zoom, perfectly fine. And because of its internal zoom style, it is actually really nice to turn, and if you have a proper wheel to actually turn the zooming, it is pretty fantastic. That's about it for videos itself also. Now, this lens, if you ask me, is good value for money. 17 to 50 millimeters is not like common at all. Gives you a lot of flexibility, great for photos and videos. Even though at f4, yes, this lens probably not that great for low light, not that great for portraiture, but I think that, you know, such a unique focal range, and consider the construction, the non-extending style of design, is a fantastic lens for many people. People who travel, people who do streets, people who just needs a standard zoom lens that goes wider than normal, and most importantly, people who do videos. It is a very nice lens. The price wise, let me put it here, it's not too expensive, so definitely something that you can consider if you are using, for now, a Sony system itself. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this review for the 17 to 50 millimeters F4 DI III VXD lens. I certainly enjoyed using it. I think it's a great lens. Share your thoughts below. I mean, I would like to know how you feel about a lens. I know this Tamron is trying to make interesting focal ranges, like the 35-150, 20-40, 17 to 35 now. They are trying to experiment with all these focal range. What do you feel about it? I do want to know you guys. Comments below, and maybe, you know, tell me that what kind of focal range are you looking at for a zoom lens. You must consider one thing though: the faster the aperture, the bigger the lens. But, you know, focal ranges, I have seen quite wild ones. Do take some time to think, and I'm really interested to know. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this short little video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.